All right, it is now 6:30. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Ms. Neiman, will you please lead us in the reciting of the national anthem?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Item 3.01, the KECC Strategic Plan. Dr. Rumpus, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Vice President Caffey. Board, we used our August board meetings, our work session, and the business meeting to get to reflect on last year's strategic plan and then present at the district level goals and updates for the 25-26 strategic plan and the work that we are doing. We are really, really excited tonight to begin our first of 4 board work sessions where our school leaders will get to be here and talk through the success that they're experiencing at the school level, share with you some of the opportunities they have and the exciting things that are going on in their schools and the work that they have planned for this year. So I will turn things over to Dr. Bailey and he will introduce our KECC team.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you very much. I'm excited to sit up here with our KECC team, and Dr. Rose will introduce those folks in a moment. But I wanted to just give some preamble to all of the things that we'll see tonight. KECC, which also hosts our Early Childhood Special Education Program, Parents as Teachers Program, and Adventure Club, has made tremendous growth and a number of changes since 2020. I'm extremely proud to work alongside this team and excited for them to show you not only their presentation, but to show the data and information about our programming. As a quick note, these programs are 12-month programs that provide supports for students and families all throughout the school year and many hours throughout the day as well. Before I turn it over to Dr. Rose and her team, I did want to share just some highlights for each of these programs. Please note this list is in no way exhaustive, and our team at KECC has made substantial and lasting contributions to our students, staff, families, and community. So, since 2020, KECC has added 3 additional classrooms, increased enrollment by 60 students, and increased the number of financial partnerships for families significantly. Implemented a certified teacher model. Implemented an MTSS model with a dedicated school psychologist. Added social work support. Moved the main office to a new location to maximize safety. Redesigned pickup and drop-off procedures to go to each classroom instead of going to the main lobby area. Redesigned fencing and other campus safety and accessibility improvements. Added increased academic opportunities, many of which you'll hear about tonight, as well as learning supports. Adventure Club, since 2020, has increased enrollment by 40%. Summer Adventure Club is even more impressive, has increased enrollment by 180%, which is a huge, huge number. The staff increase has been about 70%. The team has redesigned a staffing model to improve programming, improving retention rates to well over 85%. They've also utilized and implemented several student workers who have been key to the support for our Adventure Club program. Further developed full-day programming and improved summer programming, and have already put out their flyers for this school year's full-day programs that are available. All of this while staying well within budget. Our Parents as Teachers program has increased visits by 37% since 2020, increased screenings by 60% since 2020, increased staff by 22%, added community events and classes for our parents, moved the Parents as Teachers closet on campus, and it's very organized, by the way, and a great way to look, and has continued to minimize the wait list for our students and their families throughout. KECC is the first introduction that many of our families get to the school district. Parents as Teachers is the first introduction that many of our families get to school district. And our Adventure Club program is usually the first and the last place our students are at the elementary school. So this is a key part of our program at the Kirkwood School District, and just a wonderful team to have. So I'm grateful for the work they have, and some of the data, again, is just very, very impressive. So turn it over to Dr. Rose.
Thanks, Dr. Bailey. It is such an exciting time tonight to be here with you. It's a moment we look forward to every single year, so thank you for making space on your busy agenda to just hear about the latest and greatest with all of our programs. Before I dive into our presentation, I'd really like to highlight Jen Hahn here tonight. She leads our Adventure Club program. You've heard those big statistics regarding our growth. Those are really possible due to her leadership, and she touches that in a variety of ways every single day. We're so lucky to have her. And then Mary Pat Blaskowitz, who sits alongside us tonight as Assistant Principal of KECC. She is just ready to jump into whatever's needed at our site and just a visionary to help us just keep becoming better versions of ourselves year after year. And then we have Penny Chastain, who is our coordinator of parents as teachers. And you also heard the increased numbers that Dr. Bailey touched up on with regard to our parent visits and our screenings and a lot of different pieces. And really, she leads that work every day alongside her team and just generates great outcomes year after year. So I couldn't be more excited and feel more honored to get to work beside this team each and every day. We look forward to the opportunity to be here with you tonight to just share some of the progress we've made across the last year, really highlight where we're headed, and then just envision our future together. So thank you so much for having us. All right, well, first up, we just really need a pause, in addition to the amazing individuals sitting beside me, to just highlight the team that you see on this slide. These are the real difference makers in our community, in the living rooms across Kirkwood, the Kirkwood attendance area, in the classrooms at KECC and Robinson, and in all of our adventure club spaces at our 5 elementary sites. These are truly the individuals that make the magic happen, and they just bring so much to our student experience each and every day. They are the heart and soul of all that we do, and there's just no words to describe our depth of gratitude that we have for what they pour in for our students on a daily basis. And together, this team had the opportunity to touch the lives of over 1,400 students when we look back on the 24-25 school year. And in my mind, that's just a whole lot of difference making going on in our community. We know a picture's worth 1,000 words, and because we are in a lot of different places and spaces across our district, we'd like to just offer you the opportunity to take a look back on our past year. We brought forth some photographs that we think capture special moments within each of our programs. And we hope you'll be able to see that a pioneer's journey starts with us, as Dr. Bailey said, whether it's starting their educational point with our Parents as Teachers program or our preschool program or their day with Adventure Club. And it's just really a privilege that we all hold close to our hearts. So I hope you enjoy.
This friendship is all we need. Best friends forever. We'll never forget the days of laughter and no regret. In our hearts, it'll always stay. The innocence of that first school day. This friendship is all we need. Best friends forever. We'll never forget the days of laughter and no regret. In our hearts, it'll always stay. The innocence of that first school day. This friendship is all we need. Best friends forever. We'll never forget the days of laughter and no regret. In our hearts, it'll always stay. The innocence of that first school day.
She's a pioneer. Él es un pionero.
I'm a pioneer. Yo soy Pepe. I'm a pioneer. I'm a pioneer. We are pioneers. We are pioneers. We are pioneers. We
thank you to Penny, who brought our idea to life, because we just really wanted to represent that a pioneer's journey does start with us, and the opportunity we have to be in service to our families even before their pioneer is actually born, all the way through 5th grade, is just something that we feel so lucky to get to do every single day. All right, moving on to celebrations. You'll see a variety of celebrations from each respective program represented on the slide. Due to our time that we have together tonight, I will be just touching upon one item in each column. Having shared that, please feel free to ask questions about any of them. So first up, Adventure Club. One of the real highlights for us year after year is really the wait list. That is something that our team works really hard to address in a swift manner. This year we started the school year with 23 students on the wait list. Most of those students were added in late summer. And then as of today, we have 5 students remaining on the wait list. Those are students who we are trying to find one-on-one supports to partner with those individuals to just foster their success from start to finish in the program. And so we're actively interviewing and working to recruit our newest team members to be able to support those students that remain on the waitlist in Adventure Club. And as soon as we're able to bring a staff person on board, we'll be extending invitations to each respective student. So we just really see that as a point of celebration. We know many of our neighboring communities have struggled with wait lists, and I think really our ability to tackle the wait list is just a testament of Jen's leadership and the culture she creates within the program and helps us retain staff, and also just our strategy of recruiting student workers. We have so many of our oldest pioneers represented in our Adventure Club staff, and we think that's a really cool opportunity for a variety of reasons. It provides more staffing, but it also gives a bridge between our young elementary students all the way to those students at Kirkwood High School. Moving on to an area of growth, we all know the role that the environment and having a thoughtful environment in which to learn and play every day plays in how kids feel when they're with us. So we poured energy into working to enhance our environments in the Adventure Club setting. We really want them to feel like a sense of well-being in those spaces. We want them to feel welcomed. And if you were to visit our elementary sites, you would notice some additions this year. You would notice rugs in those spaces, cozy corners, sensory tables, and light tables. We just really want to have something for all of our students to find engaging along the way. And in addition, we've overlaid some programming around yoga and mindfulness. So we just think that's an additional layer of well-being when we think about environment and programming. So that's really something we'd like to highlight. And as Dr. Bailey touched upon, the growth in summer, in terms of summer adventure programming, it was a record-breaking year. We had an average enrollment of 218 campers across each session, with an all-time high session of 233 students enrolled. Not only did Jen and her team really work to increase the number of students that we were programming for, we also extended the length of programming. We shifted from 6 weeks to 7 weeks, really just offering more continuity for families. So added that 4th of July week of programming this year, and really, had a positive response from families. And our goal is to be there for whenever our families might need us. And I anticipate that's an extension that will continue into future years. Now, time to focus on some great things that happen in our Parents as Teachers program. 10 parent educators this year were so efficient and effective. If you think about 10 individuals being able to complete a visit cadence of 2,084 family visits, it was like an unstated goal that Penny had in her mind. But like the team achieved it, and so then we made it an out loud goal because we didn't want them to feel that pressure, but we just thought that they could get there, and that was really a great milestone to hit. Not only did they increase the visits by 9%, they also increased screenings by 8% year over year. So they conducted a total of 565 screenings with our young learners and their families, with 103 of those leading to further evaluation, whether that's just not maybe a formal evaluation, but it could be an interim step to just get supports that they need, all the way up to a formal evaluation. And so knowing the power of early intervention and what that means to our student success, that's just really a lot to celebrate with our Parents as Teachers team. Being a team that's committed to continuous growth and improvement, we voluntarily made a decision to be included on the DESE dashboard. It's not something that's required of Parents as Teachers programs at this time, yet we chose that because we felt like we could see our metrics in that space year over year, really looking at how are we doing compared to ourselves from last year in a variety of different ways, from family visits to screenings to family feedback through explicit surveys through our Parents as Teachers program. Not only can we look at how we're doing our program year after year, we can also look at how are we doing compared to other Parents as Teachers programs in the state, because it has a Missouri summary that we can compare ourselves to. And you can really look at how families are responding to data here in our local environment, then also comparing how's that rating across the state to really look at areas of growth for ourselves. And then lastly, Penny is not only a leader among us here in Kirkwood, she's a leader across the state. She is now entering her second year of sitting on DESE's steering committee for the Parents as Teachers program. And we know that like having her perspective and voice in that room really helps to ensure that we stay ahead of what's coming. And then also she's able to just contribute all the knowledge that she has to just help the future of Parents as Teachers on a larger scale. So we're very excited for her participation in that. Moving on to our preschool classrooms. This was our first year of implementing the certified teacher model, and we really saw a lot of benefits to that, adding the dedicated plan time, the weekly PLC meeting opportunities. We really saw that impact start to show up in our MyIGDE's benchmarking data that we do in first quarter, a winter period, and then in spring. So a few little pieces of data that I'd like to highlight in our rhyming proficiency subset. At the 4-5 level, we saw significant increases. We started the year with 44 students who were scoring at proficient, and then at third quarter, we had 83 students who achieved proficiency, and we intentionally moved our benchmarking period back this year to third quarter, whereas historically we had done it later we had completed that later in the school year. We wanted to have time to really respond to what we saw in that data and make the most of the fourth quarter. Looking at sound ID, just when Dr. Bailey spoke about the MTSS process, we really have worked to just solidify that process as a part of who we are as a school community. And when you look at the sound ID, our tier 2 interventions that we had really yielded positive outcomes. We had 95 students who had tier 2 interventions, 95% of them increased their raw score. And then 65% moved up a tier. And so we really see that as a point of celebration, and we're looking to really continue refining our look at data next year to just really keep increasing the number of students reaching proficiency. And again, that was, our third quarter period that we were looking at. And then also the area of quantity comparison. When we're talking about numeracy, we saw a reduction in learners scoring at risk. At the beginning, we had 12 learners who scored at that at-risk category, and by the time we got to third quarter, we had reduced that number to 4. And we also still had that last quarter to really be looking at how are we responding to and supporting those learners. Shifting to some celebrations around equity. Those of you sitting in the room know how emotional I was about the opportunity to add 27 spots this past school year that were totally reserved for families that might not have otherwise had access to preschool. And so I'm really proud to say that we had all of those spots filled this past year. We really can look back on a lot of different pieces that we found to be just highlights of making that move forward and making that commitment for access. And so that really is something we're excited about continuing. Looking to this year, we have 25 of those spots filled, and we have 2 more that we're working to fill at this time. Obviously, we'd like to see that continue to increase over time. We feel like it's a step in the right direction, but we're always looking at what can we do to even have that number increase. Another piece under the area of equity that we'd like to just touch upon is just we have had a goal year after year to try to have a more diverse staff. We know the importance representation plays in our learning community for all of our students, and so we're excited to say that we're seeing that number of staff that we have, staff of color, increase year over year, and we know the impact that has on our community. And right now we're looking at how can we continue to just see that just continue to grow as we look to our future. In the way of an academic celebration, I'd like to pause and thank Dr. Dickinson, who's sitting in the room tonight. She really helped lead the charge with our certified team to just revamp our progress reports and look at alignment across age levels, and also look at anchoring those progress reports to the Missouri Early Learning Standards. And that's something that we had not had the time or capacity to do in several years. And the very things that allowed that to happen this year was just the addition of the certified staff to be able to work in the summer for stipend work and add to just our focus project, and then also the additional work days that we had during the school year that were not always an option at KECC. And so just want to share a way in which we use that additional time and staffing to just really up our game in terms of just our academic outcomes. Moving from celebrations to like what's ahead for us. So you'll notice on each slide we have one action item for each of the strategic objectives in alignment with each of our respective programs. Obviously, this is just scratching the surface. We have a whole strategic plan that we're working to pull together as a greater school team across this month, which you'll see at a later date in a more comprehensive way. Tonight, we're just touching up on one item on each of the slides to just give you insight into how we see these objectives being focused on and played out in our school setting. First up, I'd really like to highlight the Parents as Teachers item, which is focusing on increasing the number of parent cafes that happen across the year. We really know the value when small groups of parents can unpack a topic or a developmental aspect of their child's journey together alongside a parent educator. That is a really powerful model for creating a sense of community and connection and embedded support for families. One of our barriers to making this vision possible in prior years has really been some of our spacing limitations. So we know that this is very important, and we just want to step outside of the spaces we have available to us traditionally and think, where can we have this be a reality? So we're looking at Powder Valley and some walk and talks. We're looking at some different community partnerships within our community, the new Play Cafe that's opening, and how we might partner to have space there and have meetup groups there. And really just thinking about what's possible, not letting space be a barrier. So we're super excited to develop a cadence of activities across the year that you'll see show up on our PAT calendar. Looking at strategic objective 2.1, would like to really focus on the KECC item of really reevaluating and re-envisioning our waitlist process. We know that year over year, we've had some families in our community that don't feel as though the waitlist is beneficial in its current design to them, and we can notice some of those impacting factors when we think about families who are new to Kirkwood. Many of our families already come in saying, KECC is not an option for me because I didn't live here when my child was born. Another group is like, if you aren't thinking ahead enough when your child's born to put your child on the wait list and you live in Kirkwood, that still is impacting you. And then when we think about birth dates, obviously our cut point for our school year starting is August 1st. So just if you have a kiddo who has an August 2nd birthday, compared to someone who has a late summer birthday or late spring birthday, the opportunity to access KECC, even if you put your child on the wait list at the time he or she is born, really diminishes as the birth date falls later in that school year. And we really just want to take a long and hard look at our process. How can it be improved? How can we work to make it more equitable for our whole community, and really just reconsider that process? Looking to strategic objective 3.3, we are going to highlight the KECC item again. We know that the greatest gift at KECC is teaming, and one of the greatest challenges is teaming. So we put adults in spaces in groups of 2, 3, 4 to work alongside one another all day long from the time they arrive until their day wraps up, making decisions for kids, supporting individual programming, and we really know and understand the aspects of teaming that can be complicated. And we're trying to really think through a multi-tiered system of support, much like we have for our students, of what are our universals or tier 1 supports for our teams, what are our universals for what do we do differently for our teams who are brand new teams to KECC? What do we do differently to support teams who have a change in membership to make sure that their team health is staying strong across the year? And then how are we putting structures in place to normalize that teams are going to have moments of struggle? And how are we putting processes in place to normalize a way to address those in a systematic fashion. So we're excited about what might come out of that. And lastly, looking through strategic objective 4.1, we really know the impact that strong parent engagement has across all of our programs. Adventure Club is really diving into what else can we be doing during our Adventure Club times to really get more just FaceTime with our families and have their family members come in and have side-by-side experiences with our learners, more like play and stay opportunities that happen within program hours or either extending beyond program hours. Last year we did one trial with a STEM event and opportunity, and we found that was a positive experience for our families, and our staff had the opportunity to just really have conversations and connection moments with those that attended. So really looking at trying to achieve that on a quarterly basis when we look to this year. And then obviously we want to take this time to just thank each of you in this room, the amount of time and energy that you give to supporting us, whether we're with our earliest learners or the kiddos all the way up to seniors at Kirkwood High School. Just thank you for your support of us all year long in your role as board members, and also support of our senior leadership team who just help make us the best we can be for our students. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Rose. We'll start on my right. Ms. Shern?
We were playing musical chairs earlier, but thank you for this. This was very informative. It's always great to see what our little kids or our little babies are doing. Couple of things. I love to hear about like Adventure Club, that wait list, because I know it's come a long way. I know that was one of the things that we talked about when I first got on the board, so it's great to hear that it's significantly decreased in the growth that you guys are seeing, even with the parents as teachers. And I love the fact that even the wait list for the actual, for kiddos to actually attend, you're still looking at ways to figure out how you can make it better. And that's what I've noticed, just like the patterns of you see an issue or a problem and you're trying to constantly come up with solutions. And I also love the MTSS at the staff level. That was pretty exciting to hear, and very like an interesting approach to make sure that teachers feel welcomed and a sense of belonging, and really thinking through those things to like take, a lot of times we take our staff and even our families outside of the environment in which they're always accustomed to coming to. It kind of boosts that creativity, and people don't necessarily leave jobs because of the work and the hard work, and they leave it because of their bosses or because of, the experience that they're experiencing on a daily basis. So I applaud you for taking that extra step and helping to build community in your space. So good job. Thank you.
Ms. Hepburn?
Yeah, I just, this is my second year getting to hear your presentation, and for the second year in a row, you have brought innovation, real tangible identifying what you want to accomplish, what the goals are, and then applying real tangible approaches to try real programs. And it's just something I really appreciate that you can map out here and that you can see, what you're going after. You are really, I just think, a really good example of what I would love to see more of across the district, and I appreciate you very much. Thanks.
Ms. Andrews?
You all have been busy. I love your presentations always. I love to have you guys come. I really appreciate the way that you look at all aspects of your programming, and you really take a very hard look at it. You really question what's working, what's not working, and you dive in and you work to figure out how to make it better for kids, staff, family. It gives me goosebumps. That is true leadership, and I just want to thank you guys for that. I really like to hear about the impact that moving the staff to the certified, just that connecting it to the learning standards, I think is really, really important and beneficial. And I want to say thank you, Miss Penny, for representing us at a DESE level. They're lucky to have you. We're lucky to have you. So I do have a quick question, and this one we can get this information later, but what percent of our kindergarten kids attend KECC? And I don't expect you to know this off the top of your head, Dr. Bailey, or anyone for that matter, but I just, as I hear all that you're doing, I just want to kind of have that idea of what percent of our kindergartners are attending. So okay.
Sure. I don't have the total
No,
enrollment
no,
for
no.
kindergarten across
Yeah.
the district. However, in our 4 or 5 full-day classrooms, we know that we have 20 kiddos joining us, and we have 5 sections, 4 at KECC, and
Okay.
then 1 at Robinson, obviously.
Okay.
Sorry, so that's 100 kiddos. I
Okay.
apologize.
No.
And then our half-day classes, I don't have their enrollment in front of me in
Yeah,
terms
no,
of
no,
where
no.
they ended because they fluctuate across the year.
Sure.
But historically, I think it's been about 20% of kindergartners.
Okay.
Yeah, because you got about 450-ish kindergartners that are coming in. One thing I can say that this team doesn't speak enough about is that not only do they work on decreasing our wait list and helping students enroll at KECC, but they also work with families if that's not an option, and work with the community setting and try to find a match for them regarding preschool and regarding other opportunities. So we know that there's at least roughly 90% of our students come into kindergarten having some preschool experience, whether that's with KECC, or in some cases, KECC has helped facilitate a match with another community-based program that lines up. So
That's the thing that's so amazing about you guys. It's so multifaceted. It's not just when you think about it like preschool. I mean, you've got, from birth to, like you said, 5th graders. I just really thank you for that. The other thing that I wanted to ask, and again, don't feel like you have to answer this right now, but we have the 27 spots. And I don't know if this is even if we could figure this out, but do we know like a need for how many spots are needed for families in need of that? I don't know if we have that ability, but that would also just be kind of something I would be maybe interested in learning more, just to see what we can do to add more spots to make sure we're serving as many kids. But I just have to tell you guys, thank you. Thank you. This work is hard, and I truly appreciate all that you guys are doing. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Ms. Pangborn.
Perfect. Well, I told you this is one of my favorite presentations all year round. Similar to last year, the video made me tear up, and I think I started crying before you even pressed play, which, because the video is just so moving, and it really does highlight all of the work and the kids' faces and just the excitement. I love that you worked in families that don't have kids in the district yet, that are excited to be pioneers, and the students who went through KECC. I think that really tells the legacy that you are building in those students. I think last year we saw the video after talking about taxes, which was a little nice, but just from a timing standpoint. But again, for the second year in a row, it is so amazing that we don't have a wait list, that you are moving the needle, because I remember when my kids were younger, there was a wait list, and that was just a really hard thing and very troubling for parents. So that's really amazing. I'm also really impressed with how you continue to adapt to meet the needs of our youngest learners, especially even hearing how, as we're starting to now track, right, what the percentage of students, we're starting to track things, the percentage of students who have increased in understanding their rhyming. And when we start to watch the needle as they go into kindergarten, to Ms. Andrews' point, and 1st grade, I think that we're going to see those impacts for years to come. And knowing that we're finally tracking it and we're working in PLCs, I am just really excited to see the impacts over the next couple of years. And just a couple more things. I'm really excited to see what comes out of your brainstorming sessions, you said, for discussing the wait list, right? We know it's a barrier. We know that parents get anxious about it. And how you're engaging families in Adventure Club. Those weren't even things that were necessarily on my radar, that we could be improving, but to see that you're thinking about it, and I'm anxious to see what you come back next year, that you learned through that process. And then I had the one question that Ms. Andrews kind of highlighted: if we have 27 spots that we're meeting right now through scholarships and funds to help those students, what is the actual number? I mean, if it changes year to year, but how many other students, could we estimate that really would like to be here and just have those barriers? So thank you so much.
I don't have that answer for you this evening, but certainly we'll be thinking of ways that we can gather more data and understand what the need is in our community. I know Penny gets a firsthand look sometimes through our conversations through the Kirkwood Area Every Child Promise program, beyond, like for families that might want a choice elsewhere other than KECC, and we really believe in the power of that. Having heard that question from the both of you, we'll definitely dive in and see what we can find out to just be able to put some data to the question that you're asking about. One of the things we're hoping to do this year is just engagement of our community and families in a bigger survey, like not just about the barriers of preschool, but what are you hoping for the future. One of the pieces we noted this year was we had the opportunity to tour 15 to 17 families who weren't really ready for preschool in the 2-year-old year, and we know when they pause on accepting that opportunity, there's not often an opportunity later on. And so we just want to really look at a lot of those different pieces on what are our families hoping KECC looks like, and continuing to adapt to what our community need is and reflect that in how we move forward. So we'll work together some of that data.
Thank you. Ms. Neiman.
Yeah, thanks. I would probably echo a lot of what my fellow board members have mentioned. Congratulations on the really important victories that you all have worked hard to achieve. And just want to underscore, as we've talked about, getting the wait list down and having these community events, engaging families is just so important to making everyone feel part of the Kirkwood community out of the gate. I know a couple of weeks ago we were talking through some of the strategic planning results from last year, as well as what we're looking forward to for this year across the district. And one of the metrics that was a little disappointing in my mind was the sense of belonging that some of our families felt like, and really embedding that at the foundational level when they first enter the district is amazing. So I would even just highlight, I don't think you had the opportunity to highlight it, but just some of the activities that you all have in the building and in the fields to welcome people into the buildings and the community really set an important foundation for making people feel like they belong, both the students and the families. So really thank you for for your leadership in that space and taking the initiative to really get those programs running. I do want to ask one quick question. So I know we talked a little bit about the impact that adding certified staff to the team has really allowed you to help increase the focus on, I hate to call it academic achievement, but kind of, right? Like the progress that our children are making in learning. Can you talk a little bit, for those who might not be as familiar with the distinction between certified and non-certified staff, what that looks like at KECC and at, is it ESCE? Just like, what does that day look like for them, and how does that create those times for them to focus on other metrics?
Sure. In our ECSE program, we have had certified staff in that program since it started here in Kirkwood. And in that space, it looks like a certified teacher who's certified in early childhood special education, leading programming from 8:30 to 11:30 each day, alongside 2 EC educators, which are support staff positions. And they also repeat a session in the afternoon, 12:30 to 3. And that team of 3 really works to implement programming for the number of students that are in their respective age levels. And then when we look to the new shift, which was in our full day classrooms, last year was the first year we added the certified positions in the 3-4 and 4-5 classrooms. And we have a team of 2 educators in that space. One of them works a 10-hour day, and the other comes in 7 to 5:30. The second educator comes in and works 7:30 to 4. And then the certified staff member arrives and works 9 to 4:45. And so that team of 3 really are the ones delivering the instruction to our students to facilitate small groups, to navigate the routines of the day, to be able to lead like whole group instruction, obviously all the different parts and pieces, and then individualize with interventions. So the team of 3 at the 3, 4, and 4, 5 age level have 20 students in their classroom. And so they really work to optimize the instructional experience for each of those kiddos. And then the certified staff member has a 50-minute plan time a day, and then we have that 1 day a week where we're meeting as an age level PLC.
That's great. That's amazing. And just want to underscore, I think, the importance of that really instructional learning that you've been able to really weave in and emphasize over the last couple of years. Because I know that not only obviously helps set the kids up for success from an academic standpoint, but also grows their confidence so much. I'll never forget my kids swearing up and down that they weren't ready for North Glendale because they heard that they had to count to 100. And of course I said, don't worry, they'll get you there, they'll get you there. And sure enough, they knew that right away. So that confidence, I still remind them of that when they get nervous about things even into high school. So that you guys really set them up for success in that way. So thank you, and thank you for continuing to extend that to all of our families in our community.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. No comment or questions or comments from me. I think the other board members covered everything. Just on behalf of the board, thank you. We've talked a lot about strategic plan goals the last several weeks and months, and just know that we all recognize that the work that you guys do set the foundation for every single goal that we're striving towards as a district. So thank you. Please pass that on to your staff. And we appreciate the presentation tonight. Dr. Rumpus, I think you had something to say.
Yeah, so one, Dr. Rose spoke to engaging the larger community this year, both around the wait list as well as around the programming. Are we meeting our families' needs? And Ms. Neiman, you mentioned strategic plan. And I think we have a great opportunity as we do that work this year to align those two things. If we believe we have the best option for our families in the community around early childhood education, which I do, for families that would choose to bring their students here, we really are limited to the number of students, additional students we can serve in the current confines of the program. They have maximized every bit of space in the school, and any true expansion would involve capital investment on behalf of the district and then bringing along the rest of the resources. And we just need to decide as a school community if we want to invest in that to offer early childhood education to more families, what that's going to look like. And so I think we have a great opportunity this fall, not just to emotionally make that decision, but to look at a lot of data and determine if we did have additional classrooms, could we fill them, and not just in the next year or two, but for the long term. So I think it's a great opportunity to look at all that together. So Dr. Rose, Ms. Hahn, Ms. Blaskowitz, Ms. Chastain, thank you for the work that you do each and every day.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome to stay for the tax rate hearing, but we understand if you would like to get home to your families. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome to stay. If not, have a nice evening. Okay, moving on. Item 3.02, preliminary tax information. Dr. Rumpus, did you have anything before we turn it to Mr. Cook? You're on.
So, that hurts my feelings. Everybody's getting up to leave. So. Well, when I found out I was going to have to go after early childhood, I thought about saying the whole thing to Sarah McLaughlin in the background, but it didn't come together in time. So we'll just kind of wade through. Are we good to go? Okay. Okay, so want to just touch on some key topics as we move forward tonight, the things that we'll be discussing and looking at, just the tax rate process. And most of you are not new to this, and some of this will be reviewed, but I know there are some new faces in the room who maybe haven't been through this process before. So we're going to talk about the tax rate process in general, the Hancock Amendment and its impact on local taxing entities, just some general information, and then we'll dive into the numbers we have so far on preliminary assessed values, a report on recoupment, preliminary tax rates, and projected revenue coming from those preliminary rates, and then give just some local comparison to the districts around us and some historical perspective as well, and then finish up talking a little bit about where we're at with debt service. So the work that we have done to this point that you're seeing tonight is based on AV data that was released in early July. The final AV numbers are supposed to be released by September 15th. I think that they have to. So we should be able to get that information by September 15th. We would expect that to go down just a bit. Usually the longer it goes, it trickles downward. It's certainly not going to go up, so we would expect those to be a little lower, but not dramatically. So the picture that you see tonight is going to be really close to what the final tax rate would be. Process that we go through there is we would get those numbers. We would do the calculations. We'd submit that to the auditor's office for review. They would send back to us. We would certify that then at the board level, or approve that at the board level, and then resubmit to the auditor's office for certification. That's all due to happen by October 1st. So obviously we would use the meeting on the 22nd to finish this process back to the board for final approval. So the calculations that you see tonight and that we'll have on that night are really governed by a law that passed, a constitutional amendment that passed in 1980, the Hancock Amendment. I used to go to church with Mel Hancock, interestingly enough, and so it's always had a special place for me, the Hancock Amendment. Really random fact about me, I guess. But so that the Hancock Amendment puts limits on how much taxing revenue, how much a taxing entity can add to their revenue by linking it to the CPI, to the Consumer Price Index. So we have this cap that is placed on us as a local taxing entity that we can't grow faster than certain metrics that are used to measure that, and we're going to touch on that in the next slide. So this year, the CPI is set for the state of Missouri at 2.9%. So you're going to see really quickly that everything else was growing faster than that. So 2.9% CPI is going to govern the amount of revenue we're able to add this year. And Hancock Amendment seems limiting to those local jurisdictions, but there's some protections in there for us as well. We would only ever have to drop our revenue to the previous year's revenue. We can increase rates if assessments go down below what the previous year was. We can make sure that we're not losing that revenue. So that while the Hancock Amendment primarily exists to protect local taxpayers, it also in some ways protects those jurisdictions as well. Hancock Amendment permits the increase from reassessment equal to the lowest of those three metrics you see there. So we're required to use the lowest of those metrics. 5% is the most we could ever grow in a year. We will see in a few slides that our AV it went up a lot this year. It went up a lot, almost historically so. We're going to see that it grew more than 16% this year, so that number is super high. CPI this year, again, is 2.9%. So this year's growth in revenue is governed by that 2.9% increase in CPI. The district can always capture all of that new revenue that's attached to new construction. And for this year, our new construction AV was a little over $19 million. That's going to be just under $700,000 to the district, about $694,000 that we get from new construction, and we are able to always capture that amount. We're fortunate to live in a community that seems to be expanding all the time, and so the new construction is always a contributor to our financial perspective annually, it seems like. I know that's pretty small, and maybe by design, right? The residential tax bill for the Kirkwood School District, this is 2024 rates. Just wanted to use this, and I know Mike has used this in the past to show some perspective about where your taxes go when you pay those in the Kirkwood School District. So really, I think this slide and the next one provide some perspective to the board and the community of just the importance of property taxes in Kirkwood and in districts all across the state of Missouri. More than 55% of all residential property tax come to KSD. So while we didn't design that system, it's really our lifeblood. And it's part of, I know, this ongoing discussion, and we're going to touch on that in the next slide too, of just the balance that comes from property tax for residents. It is by design, by the way that school funding was set up, just really an important piece of what we do here. By far the most important piece of the revenue that we recognize. So 85% of our revenue comes from local taxes. So this is mostly property tax. Proposition C falls in this as well. It's categorized as a local tax, so falls under that local revenue umbrella. So you can see that overwhelmingly this is the most important piece of the pie for us, is the conversation we're having tonight, and we'll have again on the 22nd. So I would encourage you as we transition here into the rates and revenues that we have preliminarily set, As you may have seen and heard, there's this legislative committee has just wrapped up a statewide tour on the discussion of property tax and really hearing from residents as to the future of property taxes in the state of Missouri. And this was coming on the heels of Senate Bill 3, which was attached to the stadium funding bill out of Kansas City, but there were some significant limitations placed on certain senatorial districts across the state of Missouri by Senate Bill 3. Dramatic change to the way that property taxes would be assessed and collected. Now, St. Louis County chose not to participate in that, but many counties across the state did choose to participate in that. The legality of that is in question, and I think already there's been some lawsuits filed in opposition of Senate Bill 3, but I think what it demonstrates is there's an appetite statewide for another look at how property taxes impact local residents. And I think it's imperative on us in the school district and as a board to watch that and monitor that as we head into session in January. There's no doubt going to be legislation introduced based on the tour that's recently completed. And those things would impact us significantly as those changes are made. So would encourage you, and certainly I and Dr. Rumpus will be keeping a close eye on Jefferson City in the months to come, as that seems to be a real push here recently.
And I think an opportunity for us to advocate in this space as public education officials and as a board, it may be great at some point to revisit the property tax mechanism. That needs to be done, though, in conjunction with re-examining public school funding of education in the state. To do one without the other would have disastrous impacts for us as well as for other communities. And so I think that we can always look at an opportunity to change that, but we need to push so that happens at the same time that the state would look at how they're funding public schools.
And I think that is some of the push back against Senate Bill 3 is there were these arbitrary counties that chose to participate and not, and so there wasn't a uniform approach. And really, as Dr. Rumpus made reference to, no new revenue to offset the loss in revenue that would occur, and so could be devastating. I think that this conversation in conjunction with the potential formula rewrite really would just be incumbent upon all of us to pay attention to Jeff City and what's going on there in the coming weeks. So we'll head into the numbers that we have so far as we prepare to set the tax rate here at the end of September. So this chart is going to show assessed property values that were released over the summer in July. I know Mike reported way back in March on those initial numbers, so they were a little higher than these, and I would expect these to be a little higher than the numbers that we'll see on September 15th. But as of now, you'll see very large increases in the assessed value of residential and commercial. We actually saw some small decreases. Really, the agricultural piece is such a small part of the puzzle for us that those numbers can look big, and a 37% decrease there, or I think, yeah, 37.15. It looks dramatic, but it's really a very small amount of revenue when it comes to the impact on the overall budget. But you see the 19.5% increase in residential values, 15% plus in commercial, a little bit of a reduction there in personal property. So this is the second year in a row that personal property assessed values have gone down here in Kirkwood School District. And it seems as though, in visiting with others around the area, that this is just a correction on some values that really took off in 2022 after COVID. You saw this massive spike in personal property values, and there's this ongoing correction over time, I think, that's bringing that back to more reasonable assessed values. And so these are the numbers that were used then to build up on the tax rates. Wanted to throw in a slide. I did this at the last minute. Kind of like an archaeological dig going through Mike's spreadsheets to find what I'm looking for, but I found this this morning and wanted to throw that in, that this is the second largest increase in assessed value dating back to 1994. So 31 years, we're seeing that the 2025 values is a huge increase for us. And that takes into account a decrease in personal property too. So if we had seen even a small increase, probably would have been one of the larger, if not the largest, that we had seen. So just putting in perspective what we're seeing in the values of commercial and residential businesses across the Kirkwood School District and really St. Louis County all together. My pages are stuck together. Okay, so the next slide is going to talk a little bit about recoupment. And again, for those of you who are veterans to the board, you probably have a good grasp on what this means. As a new resident of St. Louis County and a new person in this position, I'm not as familiar with recoupment as maybe even you are. I've been digging into that over the last month. That's been something that Mike has been very proactive about, and we want to keep that going. That's a valuable piece of the funding perspective here for Kirkwood schools. Property tax recoupment is this mechanism we have that taxing entities have to recoup lost revenue from a prior year. So taxpayers all the time are appealing their assessed values to the Board of Equalization and then moving that on to the State Tax Commission as sort of the final say. And as that process plays out, a lot of times as they're successful, those values come down, and that impacts the levies that we were allowed to use in previous years. So as those assessed valuations drop, we would actually be able to institute a recoupment levy to regain some of that revenue that we lost. So think of it as what we're getting ready to talk about, how CPI limited or assessed value maybe limits the growth. If we had incorrect numbers back then it would have given us an incorrect levy. As these amounts are adjusted, then we have used incorrect numbers to set those levies. We can go back in time and recoup that. It's a one-time levy. It falls off at the end of that year, and then you move on to the next year and take a look at all those. Luckily for me, there are decisions made all the way back to 2019 this year. So I have 6 years worth of data to comb through, and we put those numbers together and sent them to the state auditor's office last week, expecting to hear back hopefully this week on the work that was done. I also turned my work into Mike, and he graded it for me, and it seemed like it looked okay too. So appreciate his help through that process too. It's a very worthwhile process when it comes to local funding, but it is super complicated. So as you can see in FY25, almost $1 million in recoupment revenue and those tax adjustments. So feel like for our students and staff, it's a worthwhile process, and hoping to get those that word back sooner rather than later, because according to Mike, it's often a back and forth with the auditor to get those numbers exactly right. So we're waiting on that. The numbers you're going to see moving forward in the slides coming up will not have any recoupment included in there. So while we expect AV to possibly go down just a bit, we would also expect probably to be able to add some recoupment money to that and maybe even that out over time. So here are the preliminary tax rates based on the assessed values we have at this point. Again, waiting for those to come in, and these are based on a 2.9% CPI. These are the preliminary rates we have. So the combination of that strong growth in AV, that 16% increase, paired with the 2.9% cap, it's leading to, as you can see, some pretty significant reductions in that residential tax rate and the commercial tax rate, and overall our blended tax rate as well. So if you think about the limits that you have on recovering that revenue, the tax levy is what is going to modify that and moderate that, and so it's going to roll way back this year, 2.7658. I'd remind you that 2.75 is the lowest allowable levy in the state of Missouri for operating. So boards can override that, but districts all across rural Missouri will often raise their levy up to 275 or use that as a stopgap, because that's as low as we're constitutionally allowed to go. So we're rolling way back this year in response to those value increases, so taxpayers don't have a burden that's above and beyond what Hancock Amendment would allow. So our maintenance and technology levies would be set at 12.5 cents under this view here, and so we'd expect that to be pretty consistent with the numbers that we get coming up. So the revenue that we would hope to and expect to generate is on this next slide here. So I think that you got the most updated. I had a math error on this, and so hopefully you have this. This I think is the most accurate version, and so hopefully you have that as well. So under the AV numbers we mentioned on the previous slide, the maximum revenue to which we're entitled is $76,779,485. So we typically will use a 97% collection rate to make sure that we're not overextending ourselves budget-wise. And so what you see reflected there on the first column is 74, 476, 176. That is 97% of the revenue to which we're entitled using those earlier numbers. So if we exclude debt service, that's what we're expecting to receive there. And as you can see, it's a little bit above what was projected for the FY26 budget. So that's always a good thing, right? We have a budget set, and the revenue we're expecting to come in excess of what the budget was. Wouldn't see any reason to expect that to go down below that level. If we compare to last year, we're looking at nearly a $2 million increase when it comes to that operating side from what we had last year. So that pretty much would reflect that CPI limitation that we talked about. So just for perspective too here, just wanted to take a look at residential tax rates by district using 2024 numbers. It's a good time, I think, to point out that the residential tax rate as it compares to surrounding districts, that Kirkwood is second from the bottom there. This is based on last year's numbers, so we just talked about how much that is going to go backward. I would expect that to happen in other districts as well, probably Parkway included. I think everybody's going to see their AVs go way up, and so that decrease is going to happen. But if you look at the 22 area districts shown here, Kirkwood is the second lowest residential levy. So I think that's good perspective for us as administrators and board members and the public, that although no one likes to pay property taxes, but as far as we compare this to our neighbors, it's still a pretty good spot to be when we compare those things there. This is the slide that I want to update because the last blue column there is incorrect. It actually should be shorter. Our residential tax rate for the coming year is going to be 303.58. So even shorter than that as we look at that historical perspective. If we compare the tax rates we see there, dating all the way back to 1994, this will be the lowest residential tax levied in Kirkwood School District. So again, in response to that huge increase in assessed value. So last slides we have here are in relation to Prop R and the schedule that we have to pay those debts that we undertook in 2021. What you see here is that there'll be two interest payments made in FY26 totaling $739,625, and then the principal amount there totaling about $5.7 million, almost 5.8. I'm sorry, 5.7 million there. So we see here on the next slide that we're going to be in good shape, it looks like, to easily make those payments and have a bit of a balance in Fund 3 as we begin to think about in the next probably 2 years. We'll have an opportunity most likely to pay that debt down even faster than what our schedule would allow for. As that revenue continues to outpace our obligations there, we would likely recommend that we just continue to pay that debt down even quicker than we had planned as that levy catches up. So last page here, just a couple of things here as we summarize and to keep with you as we head into the meeting on the 22nd. Again, the second largest increase in property assessed values dating back to my junior year in high school, which was a long time ago. So it's a historical time in the district for that. And this is in spite of these 2 consecutive years of decline in personal property. Historically low residential tax rate. So the burden necessarily is not reducing too much for our patrons because of the assessed value increase, but the rate is coming down and to help compensate for that. So again, we're expecting St. Louis County to release those numbers on the 15th. We're hoping for that evaluation, possibly even approval of recoupment calculations expected this week, hopefully, and certainly next week if not. And then we'll be bringing those final recommendations on the meeting for the 22nd. Any questions that you think I probably know the answer to? That's the only caveat I would give.
Well, let's see. Ms. Neiman.
Great, thank you. I appreciate you walking through that, especially as the newbie in the group. You can guess I would have questions.
Yes.
That I think it's helpful for us to walk through, especially for those who might be viewing it either now or in the future. Of course, taxes are a huge topic, and as you mentioned earlier, the legislative climate, and I think the climate of the community, the country and the world really is just being really attuned to, some of the economic strife that people may be going through both now and in the future. So it's always important for us to make sure that we're thinking about the taxpayer in addition to thinking about what the district needs. So a couple of process questions. One, what I'm hearing you kind of describe is that we have the AV rates are kind of set by the state, right? The assessed value amounts, like people's own personal, like property, like residential rates and things like that are set by the state.
It's
correct?
actually set by the county.
By the
So
county,
the
okay.
county assessor will issue those valuations for homes and cars and land and
Right.
commercial and all those things. And so that's what comes from the local assessor, yes.
Got it, thank you. But it's the state auditor that kind of verifies
What the state auditor will say is they'll set the CPI amount,
Right.
and they'll say, so we're seeing this effect on prices and folks' income across the state. So those two things can work and should work hand in hand, where as those assessed valuations go up, oftentimes it means CPI is playing an impact as well, and will help limit some of those taxation implications there. So CPI set by the auditor, and they'll eventually approve our levy. The assessed valuations are coming out of the assessor's office here in St. Louis County. So,
Okay.
and people argue with them all the time. That's
Yeah.
where these recoupment numbers come from.
Sure.
So.
So what my ultimate question, what I was trying to get at, is to understand the degree of decision-making authority that we have here as the board. Is it to set the assessed levy percentage? It's just capped at CPI? Is that what we're deciding, or I'm trying to gauge, do we have our hands tied in some way?
A lot of this is pretty prescriptive in nature with what we receive. It certainly is. I think the decisions that we make are more often in regards to debt service and the bond issues that we go out for. We have this budget that's driving the district staffing and programming, and we react to the numbers that we get from the assessor's office. And while there is some opportunity for the board, I think, to always set those rates, I think that there is a pretty fair mechanism in place. And I think when you compare with our levy compared with other area districts, that the board is done a good job of making that balance. So, but I think I think to answer your question most directly is it is pretty prescriptive what we get. There's a calculator that's 7 or 8 different sheets long and 60 lines each that you plug the numbers in, and then the auditor tells you, based on those numbers, here's what you're allowed to do.
Yeah.
And that's typically what we do.
Okay, thanks. So they're kind of checking your math essentially, and
Yes.
I think that's
Thankfully,
important.
yeah.
I think that's important for people to be aware of, is that
Yes.
a lot of this is set by the county, set by the state in terms of CPI rate. And so while we are going to be reviewing and approving this as a board, it's something that it's pretty prescriptive.
It
So
is, yeah.
While these rates are going up, because I know the assessed values, as you mentioned, are
Yeah.
going up a lot, and it's sticker shock to see that, there is some limitation in the amount of
Absolutely.
range
yeah,
that we have
yeah.
here.
So you respect that Hancock amendment in this case of, as people do get that sticker shock from their assessed values, they can take a little bit of solace in the fact that our levy is not going to achieve all of that revenue. It's going to roll back and try to limit the impact on our taxpayers in sort of compensation for that. I think the larger discussion is really back to Dr. Rumpus's earlier point of, is this the best method by which we should fund our schools? And so that I think it's a worthwhile conversation to have, is property taxation the best way to fund schools? But you can't have that conversation without the second pillar of, okay, what will we do if we don't use this? And
right.
so I think as I'm certain you as board members hear about the implications of the new assessed values, that you can think about how that conversation at the state level is going on too, and how we might replace that revenue.
Great. So it's a bigger picture conversation across the state,
Absolutely,
across
yeah.
maybe the country, that needs to be considered. It's
Yes.
not a Kirkwood school board can
Yes,
decide.
yeah,
these
yeah.
things
I can promise you,
unilaterally.
as a longtime district level leader, if there was any other mechanism than property taxes to fund school districts, I'm on board, because it's a hard conversation to have. And I come from a rural district. working with a lot of agricultural and farmer folks whose incomes are tight, and those are hard conversations to have. And it's no different in a district like this. Very difficult conversations when you think about the tax impact on top of all of the other taxes that we're paying. So I think we do have to be mindful of that, but at the same time, we also have to be mindful of what's good for the district and our students as well. So
Great, thank you.
hopefully that answers.
Yep, that's very helpful, thank you. And then just one other quick question. So then we have the district budget prepared to ensure that we can maximize kind of this historical spike that, we see here, back to your, junior high?
Yeah.
Junior and
yeah,
high school
yeah,
days.
yeah.
How do we think forward, not just about this coming year of, okay, this is going to increase our income by $2 million? Is there a way that we can set ourselves up for success in the long term, where we might have years where we might have a dip or decline?
Yes, I think that's true. And of course, Hancock allows us to not take a cataclysmic effect. If assessed valuations started to go down, you're able to capitalize on whatever was the previous year. I do think that that's always a push and pull, right, of those staffing questions and those programming questions. And a lot of times, those difficult conversations are more on the expenditure side than the revenue side, because oftentimes the revenue side is what it is. So once you have that complete picture, then the conversation often more centers around the expenditure side of, okay, how can we set ourselves up for success by making sure that we have the right amount of staffing and the right amount of revenue devoted to each of these different programs that we have. And so the district's in a very healthy position, fund balance wise, and will continue to be for the foreseeable future. I didn't include that slide tonight, but plan to for the 22nd. Thought that it would be more helpful to have that fund balance history coming with the real numbers that we get. But certainly the district's in a healthy position, and I think how we would set ourselves up for success is to continue to evaluate our expenses as much as possible and be very cognizant of what the revenue may be continuing to look like into the future.
Thank you for your thoughtful responses and for bearing with me on some
Sure,
of these
no problem.
elementary questions, KECC questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ms. Pangborn?
Perfect. Well, that was fun. So you did make
There
us
you go,
laugh.
there you go.
So,
And I cried while I was making it, if that makes you feel
there
any
you go.
better.
We all had tears.
Okay.
So I did really appreciate the historical property assessed value slide. I don't know if that's something that I remember seeing. And, again, with all of the discussions on tax rates and where we've even had years where we had to, we had a range that we were looking at. And our board chose the lower end of that range on multiple occasions. I think that was really important. And you had mentioned during our strategic planning session that you wanted to do some education on some of this, so I would love to see that as part of that education.
Sure.
You did say, and I'll just go back, slides 13 and 14 were my favorites. You did say that our collection percentage, you estimated at 97%. Historically, have we been up to, after we get the recoupment, at 98, 99%?
Yeah, and that would be something I would have to go back historically and look at. Almost exclusively across the state, superintendents are pretty conservative folks. So the 97% is usually undershooting what you get. And then you always have a certain amount of delinquent taxes as well. So what you missed out on the previous year are often getting paid late. And so you end up with that revenue. Now, we will use usually the previous budget year to predict delinquent taxes for the next year and then set that rate at 97% too. So you're trying to be as conservative as possible while also taking into account those things. So I would have to go back. I wouldn't want to give you a number that's wrong, but I would say typically it's in excess of 97%. That's pretty conservative.
I'm pretty sure, yeah. Okay, that's helpful. And then just a comment. In past years, I think when we've talked about the tax rates, we've given an example of like a house in Kirkwood, right?
Oh,
if
yes,
it's
yeah.
worth $450,000, here's what their rates would have been last year. Here's what they would be this year, just again, give that example.
Yeah.
And I always found that really helpful. So
Yep. I will throw that in at the next one too. I have that on one of my spreadsheets.
Perfect.
So
All right.
I'll go back and find it.
it
Oh yeah, the column on the right.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah, it does
But
have that.
we've shown it as an actual example. I'm looking at Jean Marie because I know she knows what I'm talking about, where it's
Okay.
like we
It's
actually
pulled- it's pulled
pull
out.
out
Okay,
and use
yeah,
it as an
yeah.
example, which is really helpful because people
Yeah.
have literally taken screen pictures of that. So
I'll pull that column out and just make it its own,
Yeah.
its own thing.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's
All right,
easy.
thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Ms. Andrews?
Thank you for all this hard work.
Sure.
And for diving in and really, working hard on this. I think it's important that historically, we have, because we rely so heavily on the property and, the reassessment, that's really how we kind of get an increase, right?
Sure, it is. Yeah, because it's not typically coming from the formula. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So I guess one of the things that I always caution us on is that if we see years where we don't have that increase, that's where your budget and your programming and all of that really is important. And so I just really appreciate that you're having that kind of mindset now and always, so that we're always being really critical and looking and evaluating our program needs, our staffing, and that kind of thing, so that we're just being really fiscally responsible with
Right.
our tax dollars.
And I would give credit not just to the board, but to Mr. Romay, because that's been his
absolutely.
vision, certainly,
Yeah.
of, I think conservative is a good way of putting it, but also when the opportunity was there to invest in students and staff, he wasn't also afraid to recommend that.
Right,
So,
right. It's a balance.
strategic,
Yes,
I think. Yeah.
absolutely.
Mhm.
And so I feel like I guess I worry that since we've had, a pretty big increase, for years in the future, what is that going to look like for, kind of projecting out? I just want to make sure that we're not, facing.
So sort of overextending.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
I think that comes back to kind of what we were talking about on the expenditure side, control the things that we can control and be mindful of that. But
Mm-hmm.
again, it felt very good coming here because super good financial position that the
Yeah,
district is currently
absolutely,
in. And
absolutely.
that's a product, I think, of some of that conservative mindset of let's spend when it makes sense and be conservative when it doesn't. And so I think,
Right.
I think that leads to the position that the district is in,
Yeah.
for sure.
I think your point, though, to be cautious exists because even though the property value increases is the second highest ever, the increase in revenue is a little less than 2 million, but our overall staff salary and benefit increases last year was about 2.4 million. So
That's my point.
while it is an
Yes.
increase because of the limit of the Hancock Amendment, it's not that we're realizing unlimited increase in funds. And back to Ms. Neiman's point, that's where our strong fund balance comes into place, that we ended just under 50%, but that could change in just a matter of a couple of years.
Exactly. And you can quickly outpace yourself, right? And so I just want to make sure that we are mindful of that. So I really appreciate that. And then to the 97% collection rate, I also appreciate kind of that conservative approach to that. And oftentimes what Mr. Romay would come back and well, things came in better, so.
Yeah.
So we'll get updates on that. I think that
Yes.
as the collections come in, we get
Yeah.
kind of updates on that.
And December, January are
Yeah,
huge
we
months
get
for those. and-
huge,
mhm.
yeah. And then the other thing that I just wanted to ask, and you might not know this, but so with Senate Bill 3, St. Louis County opted out, right?
That's
So
right.
we were kind of lucky in that regard because there are some counties that are really limited. It's
Yeah.
really limiting their.
The county that I left was a 0% increase.
Exactly.
Property taxes frozen at actually last year's level pre-reassessment, so
Exactly.
difficult.
So I think that with that in mind, we also need to be really thinking about if other changes could be
Yes.
coming to
Yeah.
impact us. But my question is with Senate Bill 3, and I can also look into this, does St. Louis County have another opportunity to opt in or opt out? Or is that opportunity?
That is a great question. That was a law that was passed about 1 o'clock in the morning, I think. And so
Okay.
as they were trying to hammer out that agreement, I'm not sure that they put a mechanism in there for the future.
Okay.
But I would be surprised if there wasn't a way for that to come up, because all of these are elections, even in those counties, right? All they're required to do is put it on the ballot.
Right.
And
So for board members, I think it's really important for us to understand what this Senate Bill 3 means. And that, I mean, in some of the counties that, were an opt-in, or I don't know the correct terminology.
yeah.
They literally will not see an increase in their revenue. So even if their expenditures increase with just even cost of living kind of stuff, they will not see an increase in their revenue. And so,
Every increase they will have is going to be the result of a new levy increase. They'll have to go to voters every time they need more
Right.
revenue, and that puts, I think, districts in a really difficult spot with their patrons
Community,
as well.
right.
You're back asking for another tax increase, where the Hancock Amendment, I think, is a protection that is working well in St. Louis County and was, I think, working pretty well across the state, but it didn't seem to go so well that day in
Yeah.
Jefferson City. But
well, and I just know that you and Dr. Rumpus and your team, as you've said tonight, are committed to being, responsible with staffing, programming, and that kind of thing. And so that is going to be important. So I just want to thank you for all this, and we'll keep this conversation going.
it kind of never ends.
I have actually one more question. So with the homeowners can contest their
That's
property.
correct. Mhm.
So sometimes Mr. Romay would be able to find out like the number of people that were contesting.
Yeah.
Because when you have a record number of or a record-setting increase, that often leads to more contested.
I'll work on that.
Yeah,
There-
no, and
There was 116 decisions made this year by the State Tax Commission
Okay.
dating back to 2019.
it's
So we had this-
amazing that it's
Yeah.
backlog. You don't think of it, but yeah, you're backlogged all the way.
And there was actually a number of 2025 that had already been ruled upon. But it's
Okay.
reflected in these numbers already.
Okay.
Luckily for me, I didn't
Yeah.
have to do the math on those.
Okay.
But so no doubt it plays out over years, the arguments that go on. And
Right, and I think when you see more of an increase, you see also more of contested.
for
So,
sure, yeah.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
thank you.
much.
Ms. Hepner.
Oh, okay.
It looks like Senate Bill 3 was written in such a way that it didn't include St. Louis County. So it's
They were-
not that St. Louis County made a decision, it's that the bill did not include
Oh, they
the
kind of
county.
carved them out,
The,
didn't they?
the senator representing this area made a decision, I think.
Yeah, I
So-
think that's,
So
yeah.
the county can't change its mind. The law is written as such that the county is not included.
Okay, so then they would have to, okay. But it is something that I think is so important, and I really appreciate that you guys are aware and on top of.
I think
and
there's
as
a
board.
pretty strong likelihood that's going to be found unconstitutional, and then a
Yep.
next wave will come. And so that's, I think, probably more likely what we need to be prepared for,
Yep.
so.
Okay, thanks so much.
Ms. Hepner.
So one thing that's not exactly related to this, but as I think about things like windfalls or happy years where we get miraculous gifts, I would like to eventually someday, not tonight, understand if we have an investment strategy and what we do and how that works. I would like
Yes.
to have more information on that, not tonight.
Yeah.
So
We actually have that on the radar for a future work session.
fabulous.
To
I'm
invite some our
really
investment
interested
groups,
in
yeah.
that topic.
Good, good.
And then the only other thing I was going to say is that I find your personality and presentation skills to be delightful, and you make hearing about taxes very bearable. Thank you.
I'll take that as a compliment. But thank you.
Ms. Sharon? Nope, you good? Okay, great. Nothing from me. Thank you. We look
Appreciate
forward
it.
to seeing the final
Thank you.
numbers as
Appreciate
we work through the process. So, all right, moving along. Item 4.01, just for information, the communications plan, so I would encourage all board members to take a look at that. That will be an action item on the 22nd, correct? Okay, so please take a look at that. If you have any questions, move those forward. Item 4.02, future events. September 12th, we will have a community conversation, open event with Dr. Rumpus, your team as well, correct? They're invited.
I told them this first event they did not need to attend. The future ones would invite them.
We don't
But
want to
someone will
exclude
stop
them,
by.
but please plan to join us before the home football game. I believe we're starting at 5. Great. Yep. This weekend, kind of a big event in Kirkwood with the Green Tree Festival. So we'll have the parade on the 13th. September 22nd, like we talked about, the board tax rate hearing and business meeting. And then another large event that we take a lot of pride in on the 30th of September with Unified Nights. So please put that on your calendars. So I believe that is it. So we will adjourn. Thank you, everybody.